would like to introduce you to our presenter today, Kristina Clark. Kristina is a nationally recognized expert in coalition building, nonprofit sustainability, and substance use prevention. As president and founder of KM Clark Consulting Group, she enhances organizational capacity and impact nationwide. With over 15 years of leadership in public health and nonprofit management, Kristina has guided numerous coalitions through the National Coalition Academy, equipping communities with effective tools for substance misuse prevention. Her initiatives include the widely adopted Count It, Lock It, Drop It campaign, addressing prescription drug misuse on a national scale. Kristina also serves on the executive board of the Prevention Alliance of Tennessee and is a board member of the Healing Trust, focusing on health equity and policy advocacy. And as Kristina is not coming to us from Ohio, she does have some Ohio roots, and we're so happy that she's here today. Welcome, Kristina. We're so grateful for your time.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and I'm excited to speak on this important topic. I could speak on it for multiple sessions. So I've tried to put together 20 minutes of compact information that hopefully you'll be able to use as you go back to your nonprofits or coalitions. So really today we're focused on what are those best practices for budgets and how can we formulate a strategy thinking about diversifying our income moving forward with our nonprofits, as well as what are some practical methods. So I have some helpful tips, some charts in here that you can use as you're thinking through your budgets and your funding moving forward for the rest of this year and into future years. I do want to set the stage a little for you before we dive into the budgeting and the different items I have to help you as you think through diversifying funding. And I think this is really important, no matter where you are in your nonprofit life cycle, is to get much better at visioning. Especially when it comes to our budgets, we need to know where we're going in order to figure out how much money we need to get there and to be more strategic and intentional about it. So I like to think about this as we do about our home. Most of the time we're starting at this place, this piece of land, right? If we're building a house or thinking about building a house, we have this piece of land, but we also have this vision of what the house looks like at the end, right? And we need this blueprint in the middle. And that's what I'm going to talk about, is how we build that blueprint. But first you need to know what the end goal is to make sure you have the right blueprint to get there. And so I want you to be thinking about that. At the end of the day, what does the budget and funding look like for your nonprofit or your coalition? What is that final? Is it a money amount? Is it that you've leveraged enough support from other partners to make this happen regardless of what happens in terms of funding moving forward? And so I really want you to be thoughtful about that. What does the end game look like for you as you build that final house, as you build that sustainable nonprofit? What does it look like, so that you can best figure out which one of these strategies I'm going to be talking about is going to help you the most, whether it's diversifying your funding, whether it's leveraging new partnerships, whether it's just getting more strategic and intentional about the way you budget moving forward. So be thoughtful about that. I also like to think about this. This comes from Matt Taylor Corporation. You can look up MG Taylor and see a lot of this. They're old images, but it still works, y'all. I know that there's better ones out there, but it's helpful to think about this, especially when thinking about the changing environment with funding these days, is there's a tension, right, between where we are and where we want to be. And so when I want you to think about this with your vision, that's why I'm setting the stage with this, is that we have the conditions. These conditions in and of themselves are merely conditions. They are not the problem, right? A lot of times we get stuck on wanting to grouse about the problems with budgeting, the problems with funding. And really, it's just a difference between this tension that where we want to be and where we are. And so that's why that visioning is so important, because we need to figure out where that tension is so that we can alleviate it. And so as you're thinking about where you want to be versus where you are in terms of budgeting, funding, the way the partnerships will work with that, that tension is where we need to figure out where the gaps are. Is the tension there because we need more partners? Is it because we need to diversify funding? Maybe we've really been focused on just federal funding and now that's at risk. We're losing some of that. So how can we take that as that gap and figure out a game plan to change it? So what I want you to think about, and is instead of coming from a defensive approach, is how we can have a good offense, because that's what we need as we're talking about changes happening. Changes are going to happen no matter what. We have to evolve as nonprofits and coalitions. So now is our time. This is what I tell people. I give you 2 days to get upset, cry about it, whatever you need to do. and then we need a game plan. So what I'm hoping today is to give you some options for that game plan moving forward. So what does sustainability look like for you as we're setting the stage? What does it mean to be sustainable? Is it a certain amount of money? Is it programs? Is it employees? And then we need to think about budgeting at all these levels. And this is what your first task is for thinking about that tension between where we want to be and where we are. Is a lot of times we think about sustainability as just one big pocket of money. And what I encourage you to do is be like, what do we need to sustain this really impactful program? What do we need to do to sustain our organization? And what do we need to sustain for our community impact? And so sometimes it's really helpful to start compartmentalizing it that way instead of just taking it off as one big chunk. Let's start with this one really impactful program we have and how can we sustain this? And then it helps us stair step into some of these other things like community impact and our overall organization. So I've set the stage for you. Let's talk about budgeting as the cornerstone of sustainability. Oftentimes, listen, as we get into nonprofit work, we're not really taught that much about budgeting. If we're lucky enough to have gone through nonprofit management training or to get our degree in that, maybe. But a lot of times we're just used to filling it out as part of our grant budget. And what I want you to think about is your budget as your own individual thing for your nonprofit, not something that the budget that a federal partner has given you or a state partner, but what is your budget, your perfect budget moving forward overall, regardless of all of that. And so what this takes us is a bridge when we think about this. If we start with this short-term funding, which a lot of us have, but we get better at budget planning, we get better at our evaluation, and we get better at leveraging our partnerships, that's what leads us to sustained impact. So I want you to think about these are the cornerstones of getting us to that sustained impact. Yes, we have this funding. We're grateful, y'all. But we need these other things to make sure we end up with the sustained impact. So here are some core components we'll be talking about. Overall organizational budgets. The idea that sometimes we got to phase some stuff out or maybe expand that overall evolution. Thinking about diversify funding, and my numbers are off there, y'all. I'm sorry about that. And partnership building goals. Okay, so those are the four things we'll be focused on, minus the fact that I decided I couldn't count today. So budget forecasting. Again, I want you to think about this outside of anything you currently have or the current budget you have with any of your partners or funders. I want you to think about by yourself, as an organization, or as a specific program, what you need. So what does your organization or your program need and want to achieve in the coming years? And I want you to look 2 years out and 5 years out, okay? And it's okay if it's going to be reduced money, if that's what it looks like, because you're going to leverage more partnerships. It's okay if you want to increase it. There's no right or wrong amount. I just want you to be strategic and intentional about 2 years out and 5 years out. The other thing I want you to think about, and this takes time to plan, so start doing it now, is that if we want to be sustainable and be able to lose a piece of funding and continue to maintain our momentum, I want no one piece of your funding to be over 38% of your annual budget. So if you have right now 100% of your funding is coming from one, let's think about how we could stair step to 5% being from somewhere else. This doesn't happen overnight. When I've worked with groups on this, and I did it with my own coalition, it took us about 3 years to get to this point. But the idea here is that if you could lose that piece of funding and the house would still stand, and that's where I want you to get to. And again, this doesn't happen overnight. So again, start planning 2 years out and 5 years out, and then we want to make sure we have no more than one piece being 30%. So some of how you can start doing this, so this is one of those things if you want to take back and do, is think about everything you do, because you do a lot, and start unpacking it. I have boxes here because I've moved a lot as an Air Force brat over the years. And I often think about this as we don't realize how much we have in our house or how much we do until we start writing this down. Like you start to unpack that closet, you got 10 boxes, you think it's all going to fit, and then you realize you're done with boxes and still have your closets left. That's usually what's happening with us with nonprofit work. We don't realize how much we have going on. So the first thing we need to do is unpack everything we do so we can figure out the cost of it and what we need to maintain or expand it moving forward. So it's one of the things to think back, how can we start to unpack everything we do so we can get a better idea of the cost it's going to take us moving forward to maintain or to grow it. So this is everything from financial oversight, grant reporting, your programs, strategies, organizational operations. We need to get better about knowing the cost of each one of these for our programs and organizations so we can better define how much money we need. So how can we do some of this? It doesn't have to be hard, y'all. You're good at goal statements. All of you are on here because you've gotten some type of funding before, I'm sure. So it's just getting more intentional about it. And the same way we are making sure programs are implemented or strategies are implemented, we have to get more strategic and intentional about how our budgets are done. So thinking about, if we're talking about we want to move from 30%, right, to 30, no more than one piece being 30% of our overall budget, we need to write a goal to make that happen. So the XYZ organization will increase its organizational budget by 20%, 125,000 a year in 2025 to 150,000. So we're being very intentional. We need 25 more thousand. But what I also want you to think about is, where is that $25,000 going? Right? It's not just that we need it to need it. Is it to go into staff? Is it to go into program? Is it to go into marketing? This way, we can find the right funders. We talk about diversification of funding that we can match it to. And then we want to create a budget forecast where that money would go moving forward. So I want to take a minute to talk about cost, because this is what's going to get us better at diversifying our money if we know. We're not great about this as nonprofits historically, and we have to get better at it. I'm taking here, this is an example of responsible beverage service training, a program that someone could get trained in and then implement to make sure people are carding or something in the alcohol space, right? We're really good about saying how much the workbooks are going to cost, how much staff time might cost, etc. I mean, how much location time might cost, but what we are not good at is staff time. And staff time takes a lot to figure out, but we need to be better at doing it so that we know the amount of money to go after. So it's not just about the workbooks. It's not just about the renewal costs. It's also about the marketing and the staff time it takes to do it. And we have to get better about that moving forward. So be thinking about, as you're calculating costs, to make sure you're thinking about how much staff time is going into implementing that program. So one of the things when you leave here and do, other than unpacking it, is I want you to add to your strategic and action plans, wherever you're doing it, the cost of each individual activity, so you can start getting better about that moving forward. So start thinking about your costs of each individual thing you're implementing. Luckily, you'll have the slide deck for this. If you remember back to yes and no question quizzes from teen magazines back in the day, this is what this is, but thinking through individual things that you have to implement. So this starts to make you more strategic and intentional about that evaluation piece and that partnership piece we talked about as being part of our bridge. So here's a way of saying, okay, if we have something we're implementing, say that responsible beverage service training, we're asking, is it necessary? Does it build capacity? Is it evidence-based? Does it fit our mission? If the answer is yes, then we continue going. If it's no, we probably shouldn't be doing it, y'all. If yes, what is the evidence? So this comes to that evaluation piece, that we know it's working so that we can get additional funders, okay? So is it working? Yes, we're going to keep moving on. No, we're going to cut it. Don't know, we need to assess it. Is it directly affecting the problems that we say we're dealing with? So something can be effective, but isn't looking at what we said we would look at. So that's having us refine that. The idea here is that we should be putting everything for a filter so we can prove that is worth the money we're putting into it, so we can better budget moving forward. And you'll hear me say this over and over again, if it works, why are we the only ones paying for it? And so if you have something that's effective, how can we leverage other community members to support it? So some of the things to think about with this as you're going through and using a tool like that and looking at each individual strategies is figure out from there, what is something that needs to be phased out because we're not seeing that impact from it. We're not seeing it impact our problems, our overall goals. So then we need to either, and we can't cut it immediately because it's capacity building. How do we strategically decrease it? Is it something, if it's working so well and people are benefiting from it, like if we're looking at compliance checks or something with alcohol and tobacco retailers, and we know it's impacting, it's helping law enforcement, it's helping our community, who else could pay for it? Is it something the county could roll into their budget? So we're figuring out another way to pay for it. Is it something so impactful that we need to expand it? So we need to look for additional funding. Is it something we need to cut completely, which is something that happens and it's okay? Or is there a gap that we're seeing that we need to start putting our money into? So how can you do this? This is another way of doing what I talked about in that one chart that's yes and no questions. But another way of doing this is taking everything you've unpacked, like I talked about, and just having a whiteboard with a line in the middle, and above it saying, yes, it works, below it saying no, and the line in the middle being like, I have no idea, y'all. And that's okay. And taking everything you've unpacked and being like, is it effective? Can we prove it? It goes into yes. If it goes into no, we know we need to cut it. If we don't know, it means we need to evaluate it more. This is just a way, again, of us getting better at A, who our partners can be for funding, and B, what we need to cut versus expand moving forward with our budgets. So another piece, we've added on the cost column. The other part I want you to add as we build our bridge is the partners for sustainability. I don't care where you are, whatever you're doing, whether you're starting a new grant or you're at the end, you should know who's benefiting from that. So if you're putting a youth program into place, who are all the partners that benefit from that youth program? The schools, the county, because kids have somewhere to go after school. All of those things should be marked here because those are the people you're going to for funding later on. And so this sets the stage for us being successful. It should be part of your action plan. So again, how can we do this? We want to make sure that we're building that plan just like we did for our budget, right? So we want to talk about who's the partner we need based on building it into our plan, who's connected to them, and who's going to outreach to them. So if we're saying the school is really impacted by us having this program, how can we be talking to the school about helping fund it? If it's a city who's really being impacted by it, how can we end up as a line item in their budget? That only happens if we're building a plan for making it happen. So this is where we're intentional with that. So you're building a goal statement for where your budget's going, but also where your partnerships are going that can help pay for those things that you're putting in your budget. We also have our partnership continuum, and this is where I'm just going to really briefly say, because I want to be able to talk about diversifying funding, because we only have like 4 minutes left of our time with the didactic portion, is that this doesn't happen overnight. So that's why I say plan for your partnerships and early on of who is being impacted by this, so you can move them across this continuum from coordination into partnership. This is why I say you can't propose on the first date. That doesn't work most of the time. This is a relationship building thing. So naming and framing this early on is going to be important to being able to leverage them for your budget later on. So I want to talk about diversification as with this. You guys are very probably familiar with family grants, state grants, local foundations, things like that. All important. But as we're moving into, as funding changes, really focusing on some of those local grants are going to be important. You have a lot of hidden wealth in your communities that you don't know about. Go to your banks and wealth advisors. It's sitting there. People make family foundations, but they don't have websites as some place to make sure they're utilizing and getting their tax breaks accordingly. That sits within your local banks. Start reaching out to them. Start figuring out where your wealth advisors are. They can really help lend you to where those families are that are donating money outside of having a grant or something like that they're putting out on a website. Also, some other places to look. I love Instrumental. I've been with them since they were a seed company growing up. So that's a great place to look for funding outside of state and federal funding, as well as having all those listed. Also think through your banks, not their foundations, but again, where all their money sits and the wealth that they're helping to advise on. They have a ton of family foundations sitting in here. These are just 2 examples of how you can find that. And the other thing to remember is to utilize your 990s as you're doing this. So what's great about Instrumental or some of those other places is that you can easily get to 990s and you can see if a foundation is saying, hey, we give to health, but then you pull up their 990 and they're only giving to cancer and you work on something else, you know that's probably not your best bet for your time. My final call to you in thinking about unencumbered funds is to think more about fee-for-service or social enterprise. How you can take what you do really well, whether it's training, technical assistance, you've had a campaign you've developed, a service, maybe even the use of your space that you can go ahead and make other people pay for. A great example of this is that we had a campaign that we developed in our community called Count It, Lock It, Drop It. We were able to showcase, with the help of actually Pyre, who's on the call, how it was impacting our community, and we're able to sell and reproduce it. So we got trademarked it, reproduce it, and sell it to states all across the United States, as well as Blue Cross Blue Shield invested $6 million in it. So you have things that are special. As you're thinking through these other budgetary items, think through how there's certain things that you could sell or market to make that happen. Again, just thinking about diversification. I know I only have 1 minute left, y'all. Remember, we're thinking about how we can have a little piece come from each one of these. So right now, if half of your pie chart is federal grants, that's okay. Think about how we can just get 10% more from another funder, whether it's your partners paying for something because you're leveraging them, or you're going to start a fee-for-service program. Start figuring out just what 5% could come from somewhere else. So every single time you're stepping towards sustainability. So I just want to leave you with create the plan. Think about your goals. Think about the team roles, your partnerships, and funding strategies moving forward. It is your greatest offense to making sure this happen. Get out of a defensive lens and start getting into a place where you're building a plan that you can be really successful with and you're taking control of your future. And so with that, I know I'm right at time. So I told you I could speak on it forever. So thank you all so very much. I'll be around as they move into their next steps.
Thanks, Christina. You are a time rock star. Really appreciate that. Although I know there's so much information in those slides, lots of concrete steps and tangible resources. Those slides, they are posted on the iEcho platform. If you want to go back and look through that, Christina will be here through the rest of the session to answer questions in the latter half. I personally really appreciated the conditions versus the problem part of the discussion at the beginning. But again, lots of great resources.